Hello everybody and welcome back to Bring Your Own Popcorn and welcome to another ranking video. Yeah, this series of ranking videos, because this is going to turn into a little mini series, are some that I've been wanting to do for quite a while now. I just didn't know the best way to tackle this particular franchise. So it's the MCU. I've been wanting to rank the MCU on the channel for a while now, but I didn't know how to tackle it because literally I'd upload the video and then a couple of months later the video would be out of date because they keep releasing new things that I'd have to slot into the ranking. And I didn't want to do the average YouTuber approach, which is rank the MCU maybe once a year. I didn't want to do that. Instead, what I've decided to do is break the MCU down into its phases. So I'm going to rank Phase 1 in this video, and then in separate videos over the coming weeks, I'm going to do Phase 2, Phase 3, Phase 4 and Phase 5. And I think the MCU has just started Phase 6. I might be wrong on that. But it's going to be all the movies, all the TV shows that are in those phases ranked from worst to best. So, in this video, we are going to start everything off with Phase 1. Overall, Phase 1 I think is a decent start to the MCU. It's not anything mind-blowing. There's actually only probably 2 films in this phase that I actually properly love. But yeah, I do think this is a decent start to the MCU. So, without further ado, let's get things kicked off with my least favourite MCU film in Phase 1. So coming in at last place for me, no surprise here, is The Incredible Hulk. I am not a big fan of this movie at all. I think the effects look pretty terrible. I think the direction is just completely all over the place. The Hulk does not look real at all throughout this full movie, and that's the whole point of CGI, is to create something that looks real. And yeah, the Hulk looks just so fake. All the CGI just looks so fake throughout this entire movie. The direction isn't great either. I would call it uninspired. It's just your average kind of comic book direction. It's like the director looked at hundreds of other comic book movies and went, right, let's do them like that, and didn't bring his own unique approach to this movie. It is just very bland. I also think the story it takes quite of an odd approach. Now, I know why it does this approach, because in 2003, Ang Lee, was it Ang Lee? I'm pretty sure it was Ang Lee, done a Hulk movie, and yeah, it wasn't great, but it basically done an origin Hulk movie, an origin story. So it was only about 5 years later, they didn't want to do another origin story, so they kind of throw you in head first, not really telling you how the Hulk got his powers. It's all told in a very, very brief montage at the start of the movie. And I don't think this was the right way to go about it. I think this should have been an origin story. Even though Ang Lee done one in 2003, and this was, I think, 2008, I think you should have still done this actually might have been 2010. I'm not actually 100% sure. But because Iron Man was 2008. I think this was 2010. But yeah, I just think that you should have done an origin story and maybe try to improve on Ang Lee's movie, rather than just throwing the viewers in head first, expecting that they know the Hulk story. I didn't really know the Hulk story before going in, so I was a little bit confused with everything that was going on, considering it's told really briefly at the start, and literally if you look away, it's over the opening credits, and if you don't pay attention at the opening credits, you will miss it all. I just think the story is pretty... They just went in the completely wrong direction. For what we got, I think it is a fairly decent story. Again, nothing incredible. I just think this story belonged to a Hulk 2 instead of the first Hulk movie. The acting and performances, again, are mixed. I actually quite like Edward Norton as the Hulk. I think he gives a pretty decent job. Not as good as Mark Ruffalo will give in the Avengers and then the rest of the MCU. But I do think he gives a decent performance. Tim Roth, as well, I think is pretty decent in this film. Liv Tyler, however, her is just an actress. I'm really sorry to any Liv Tyler fans out there, but she just really, really gets on my nerves. She whispers through the entire film, and basically any film she's in. Her performance is not convincing at all. I don't think Edward Norton and her have any chemistry in this movie at all. So yeah, it's not a great movie. Overall, out of 10, I will give The Incredible Hulk a 4 out of 10. I'll be a bit generous. I was thinking a 3, but I'll give it the benefit of a doubt. The action's pretty fun. And yeah, some of the performances are decent, so I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. And this is, again, when the MCU is still finding its footing a little bit. But yeah, it is still a pretty bad movie. Coming in at 5th place, we have Iron Man 2. Now, I just will quickly say that I think Iron Man 2 is leagues better than Incredible Hulk. It's not just a little bit better. I do think there's a big step up in quality between Incredible Hulk and this movie, even though they are next to each other in the rankings. I will say Incredible Hulk's probably the only film in phase 1 that I don't like. It's the only one I probably hate. The rest of them I have a decent to great time with. But Iron Man 2 I think is a pretty fun time. It is a pretty bog standard story again. It is where you would expect the Iron Man story to go. It gives you a little bit more backstory and stuff. And yeah, what they do with the story is fairly decent. It's nothing mind-blowing. But yeah, it is just a fun time. It is just a story written around the fact that they want Robert Downey Jr. to come back and do more Iron Man shenanigans. Not a lot of thought went into this one, I don't think, but it is still a fairly decent time. I think the performances are pretty great. We've got Robert Downey Jr. back, and he's incredible as Iron Man in basically everything that he does. I just think he's a absolutely fantastic actor, and he plays the part so well. He just plays the part incredibly. Don Cheadle we have here as War Machine. He's pretty great. Way better than, I can't remember his name, Terrence something. Can't remember his name, but way better than the first guy to play War Machine. Gwyneth Paltrow is great in this one as well. Her and Robert Downey Jr. have great chemistry. We've got Mickey Rourke in this one playing the villain, Whiplash. I'm actually a pretty decent fan of this villain. Again, Whiplash is nothing mind-blowing, but I think he's a pretty cool villain. I know he gets a lot of hate online, and I think Mickey Rourke done a pretty decent job with him. The direction by Jon Favreau is pretty great here. The effects look pretty good, especially the stuff in there's like a F1 scene, like a racing car scene. That whole scene, the effects are just absolutely incredible. I think they stand up to this day. Yeah, Jon Favreau just does a fantastic job at directing this one. Negatives, I will say, I think the character of Tony Stark is a lot more annoying in this one. He does some things that I'm like, really? Did you have to do that? I know his characters like that, but they seem to go like real far with his cockiness that he just becomes a bit unlikable in the movie. And yeah, overall, it is just a pretty standard superhero flick. Nothing great happens. It is just a fairly fun time with some great action, some pretty decent dialogue, some good performances, and yeah, it's just a fun time. I would give Iron Man 2 a 7 out of 10. Coming in at 4th place, we have Captain America, the First Avenger. Now, I know there are a lot of diehard fans of this one. I'm not personally up there. I used to really not like this movie. It used to be quite low in my ranking. It is still fairly low on my overall MCU ranking, but with some rewatch to this one, I've grown to appreciate this one a bit more. Again, I will just use the word standard for this one. It is your just general run-of-the-mill superhero movie. I will say that this one is fairly interesting. I quite like the origin of Captain America. The first time I watched it, I just didn't resonate with the character of Captain America very much, especially in this movie. As the MCU goes on, I really started to appreciate this character. In this one, he just seems to be, they put a lot of emphasis on the fact that he's just a goody two-shoes, he does no wrong. He's basically, he basically can't do anything bad. He's not got a bad bone in his body, and I find that kind of aspect of a character fairly boring. characters are best explored when you see their faults. And in this movie, Captain America literally has zero faults. So, like, I don't really... I just can't resonate with his character at all. I cannot empathise with him. I will say that Chris Evans does a good job of portraying him, even from the offset. He does a good job. I think Haley Atwell's really good in this one. Tommy Lee Jones is in this one. He's pretty good. And we've got... I can't remember the guy who plays the villain. Can't remember his name, but he's a great villain. Red Skull. Very iconic. And yeah, he's a great villain. The direction is fairly mixed here. I think when it does the World War... it's World War II, isn't it? This is when I start to forget that. I think it's World War II. When it does the World War II stuff, it looks amazing. This director obviously likes period pieces. When it does the superhero stuff, it isn't as great. The effects look pretty dodgy. It's just, again, pretty bland direction. There are some nice sequences. Again, the action in the war scenes. There's this great montage where Captain America's off fighting in war. All that stuff is incredible. But the superhero stuff isn't directed the best, in my opinion. So yeah, Captain America, the First Avenger, I didn't like it a lot when I watched it the first time. It has grown on me. I do like the origin story. The performances are good. And yeah, it's just... when it does the superhero stuff, it just feels fairly bog standard and run-of-the-mill and a bit boring. And I will also say the soundtrack of this film is top-notch. The soundtrack's incredible. I would give the First Avenger a 7 out of 10. Coming in at number 3, we have Thor. I think I like this film a bit more than other people do. I really, really loved this the first time I watched it. It was actually, the first time I watched it, a lot higher. It basically done the opposite that Captain America done. It was really high for me in my ranking. And then after a rewatch, it did drop a bit for me. But I still really love this movie. I think Chris Hemsworth is, from the off, great as Thor. I just think he's absolutely fantastic. I think basically all the performances are great. Tom Hiddleston's great. Anthony Hopkins is great. Natalie Portman is fantastic. It's just an all-round great performances. In terms of character origin stories that I found interesting, I would say Thor's, for me, was the most interesting in Phase 1. I don't know what it is about it. I just really connected with the story. And yeah, I absolutely love the story of this one. The script is really well written. A lot of people say that Thor only got funny with Ragnarok, but this film is pretty funny. There's like scenes where he like walks into a pet shop and he's like, I need a horse. It's just really funny stuff. And it is just kind of fish out of water comedy, but I think it's done very well. The direction by Kenneth Branagh is pretty great. There are some rocky CGI scenes, but I think Asgard, even from the offset, from the first movie where you see it, Asgard just looks incredible. Low points of this movie, the stuff on Earth does get slightly boring as it goes on. It just becomes very familiar very fast, and you do get a bit bored towards the end. And I think the climax on Earth, they go back to Asgard and there's another climax which is a lot better in my opinion. But the first kind of half of the climax set on Earth is very, very underwhelming. Overall, Thor is an extremely fun time, and yeah, I don't know what it is about this one. I just keep coming back to rewatch this one every so often. I would give Thor a 7 out of 10. Coming in at runner-up, the movie that started it all, Iron Man, the first movie in the MCU. I absolutely adore this film. I think to start the MCU off with Iron Man was a very brave choice. I feel like Captain America is the obvious answer. Iron Man seems like a very brave choice. And I think they pulled it off brilliantly. They picked such a charismatic, brilliant actor to portray Iron Man in Robert Downey Jr. He is just absolutely incredible. Full cast is great. Gwyneth Paltrow is fantastic. Jeff Bridges, we will get on to Jeff Bridges in a minute. I think he gives a good performance to an underwhelming villain, and we'll get onto that in a little second. But yeah, overall, good performances all round. In terms of the story, I think this origin story is absolutely fantastic, extremely interesting, so compelling. There's a lot of really heart-wrenching moments in this one, which from the offset of this franchise is extremely impressive. That they'll make me care about these characters so quickly. It's very impressive. And I think some of the dialogue's really funny. It's just a really well written movie. I will say the big letdown of the writing is the villain. He is not threatening at all. I don't know how unpopular this opinion is, but he's just a letdown and wastes Jeff Bridges in my opinion. The direction by Jon Favreau is really, really good. The effects actually look fantastic. This was 2008. And I think the CGI holds up today. There are a few rocky moments, but I think it looks really, really good. And Jon Favreau just knows how to direct superhero films. And he's proven recently that he also knows how to direct Star Wars. Overall, I think that Iron Man is just as near perfect an origin story as you can get. I will say the villain lets things down a little bit, but the action is absolutely sublime. The effects look really good, hold up today. The performances are great, and the story's really well told. There aren't actually a lot of faults for this one. I will say maybe it slightly drags in places. There is, when Iron Man's testing the suit, that goes on for a little bit too long for my liking, but overall it's a great film. I'll give Iron Man an 8 out of 10. And coming in at first place, what else? The Avengers, or Avengers Assemble, I think it is called in some countries. It's called The Avengers in the UK. This film is just fantastic. It's just truly fantastic. I was worried the first time I watched this that it wasn't going to hold up today's standards, but it's really good. It's just a fantastic, fun, superhero epic. Bringing all these characters together that you have just grown to love over the movies is just such a genius idea. To get all these characters and slowly build up to this big epic movie. It was just such a brilliant idea, and it pays off so incredibly well. All the performances are incredible, and it's so obvious that all these actors really like each other because their chemistry is just sublime. Yeah, everyone. There isn't one bit of chemistry that doesn't work. Everyone just intermingles with each other, and yeah, it's just absolutely insane. The direction is very good. The effects hold up to this day. There are a few scenes where the Hulk doesn't look particularly real, and there are a few scenes where you can just tell has just been CGI'd, animated. But yeah, overall the effects are just amazing. The script is incredible. I think the dialogue between these characters is witty. It's just so well written. It is just how these characters would react to each other. They got that down to an absolute T. And the overall story of the movie, with Loki as the villain, just works so well. It was a great excuse to bring these characters together, and Loki feels like a real threat. The whole threat on New York, it works so well and gives a genuinely good reason to bring all these characters together for one film. Overall, Avengers is such an epic, fun time. There is little wrong about it, and yeah, I just have an absolute blast every time I watch it. Every time I think about it, I'm like, oh, it maybe doesn't hold up to today's standards. And then I rewatch it and I'm like, it definitely does. With Endgame and Infinity War and stuff that just went so epic, it's unreal. You think, oh, maybe the first Avengers lacks something. It actually doesn't. It does pretty much everything that you want from a superhero movie. I would give Avengers a 9 out of 10. So I hope you've enjoyed my ranking of Phase 1 of the MCU. Please let me know down in the comments what your ranking of Phase 1 of the MCU is. I'd be really interested to hear all the different opinions. So guys, thank you for watching this video. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.